Alright folks, in this historical battleship duel video, we will be facing off the USS Iowa versus the HMS King George V. We will have 3 rounds, one at 20 kilometers, one at 15 kilometers, and the last one at 10 kilometers. Whoever wins the most of these rounds will be declared the winner. So first off, let's do the 20 kilometer match. And here we are, off to the races. The USS Iowa is taking aim, but the King George fires first with its quicker firing guns. However, the shells sail directly over the Iowa. Iowa returns fire, and the King George takes no hits. King George V has a quicker rate of fire. However, the Iowa has bigger guns. Iowa gets first blood, doesn't do very much damage though. They both have the same amount of armor, which is kind of funny. So it's really determining which is better. Bigger guns or faster firing smaller guns. Iowa opening up again, doing a massive hit on the King George. King George retaliates. It looks to hit not a whole lot. Iowa seems to be leading at the moment, but that could change. Also, chances are if you're watching this, you're probably not subscribed. So please subscribe, it's free, helps me out a whole lot, and yeah, I appreciate it. Iowa is getting all of the hits. It does not look good for the King George V. King George V gets a hit, but it does absolutely nothing. I think both ships are firing HE because they have such low forward belt and aft belts. Both have 1.5 inches, which makes penetrations very easy. Looks like the King George is very unlucky with all of its shells so far. But the Iowa is getting some crazy good hits. Iowa seems to be trying to maintain distance while the King George is trying to push in. However, that is not going great for the King George V. If something doesn't change soon, the King George V is going to get torn apart by the Iowa. Both have the same level of Generation 5 radar, or Generation 2 radar I should say. So far, big guns seems to be the way to go. But again, this is at the longest distance they'll be fighting, so maybe once they're closer, the faster rate of fire will carry the King George to victory. It looks like the King George is almost dead. One more good salvo, and it is done. There's a flooding hit. Does they take King George to the death? To the water grave? It looks like it. They're unable to counteract the flooding, and that is it. Alright, first round goes the Iowa. Alright, second round, 15 kilometers. Alright, and we are off and running. The King George V is going to hopefully do something better at a closer range. As long as they can get the first hit. I've always noticed whoever gets the first big hit is the one that usually does the best. So who will get the... Ooh, the King George gets the first big hit, but there's no flooding. It is still a pretty good hit though. Still a pretty good hit. Iowa is unable to get any good hits in return. This actually might mean the King George is in the running to win. Another big penetration. Secondary gun has been destroyed. What will happen here? So why is the little blue line back here? I don't really understand. Iowa is still unable to get any reasonable hits. King George V seems to be taking the bag this time. There's the first floating hit. Iowa is still unable to hit anything. Just 1% structural integrity damage. I think that was another flooding hit if I'm not mistaken. Iowa taking hit after hit. They're firing in retaliation, but the shells don't even hit. It's looking like the Iowa might not actually take this one home. They've been pelted too much. Will the Iowa be able to survive this ordeal? They are steaming away as fast as possible. However, the King George is in swift pursuit. Iowa has more speed and can technically close the distance and got their first big hit. However, the King George has already gotten a ton of really good hits on the Iowa. Plus a bit of flooding should slow them down. Ooh! big hit on the King George. That might put them out of commission. Their conning tower is gone, which means their accuracy goes down. However, is it going to be enough to save the Iowa? Ooh, Iowa's getting hits now. They're not doing a lot of damage. Then again, the King George isn't getting any more hits either. Iowa's opened up the distance, making the King George less likely to hit. Being at distance is Iowa's great strength because they have longer range with their 16-inch guns. I believe their guns have about 42 kilometers compared to the King George's 34 kilometers, which means their accuracy is much better. However, they are returning to get closer. They're closing the distance, which actually might be their downfall, because King George is still fully operational. And they could also be doing this just to try and finish off the King George, but if the King George gets any good hits, the Iowa might not be looking too good. However, the King George is actually trying to retreat now, going fully broadside to the enemy. Not the best idea in the world. Ooh, but a big hit on the Iowa. It is definitely paying off. Iowa has no more anti-air guns, which is, well, not really prevalent in this, considering they only have a range of 8 kilometers. A little hit. It had some flooding, but a little flooding hit. Ooh, this actually might be mostly over. The quads are out of ammo. The duel in the front still has some ammo, but it has angle issues now. No, it still can't fire. However, it actually looks like the Iowa has managed to scrape by. Iowa closing in actually, I think, saved it somehow. Even though the King George was projected to be winning in a close quarter combatant. Big hits on the King George. King George is actually not looking too good. They still have the ability to fight back, but not very much. They only have 5s and a 14. Not looking good. Iowa still has all guns except for the 1.6s in operation. Ooh, a huge hit on the King George. Folks, I think this is pretty safe to say who's going to win this match. It is now only a matter of time. King George is now got an angle issue on their gun and look to be flooding out very rapidly. Folks, I think that is it. Alright, on to the last match. Alright, last match, even though it's technically 2-1 in the theory, at best case scenario, we will try one more time as the King George V to try and regain some honor for this poor big girl. And here we go again, round 3, King George, starting at 10 kilometers-ish. Hopefully the rate of fire gets them the win, however last time, looks like closing the range didn't necessarily help them out a whole lot. They get the first blood, but it's nothing to note really at all. Iowa, I don't think it even has opened up with their big guns yet. Too busy turning around. They're only firing their secondary guns, which now secondary guns are very prevalent. There are the first Iowa shells, and a huge hit straight off the bat. It's not looking great for the King George. Despite this being a roughly even matchup, it looks like the Iowa might absolutely dominate the King George. At least the King George was able to put up somewhat of a fight in at least the second round. King George being pelted, not taking a crazy amount of damage, but a lot of hits, which means one of these might do a ton of damage. So far, seems okay. If they can get a few lucky hits off on the Iowa, they actually might be able to take this back and get some more honor. Though it looks like they are going to be going in 0 for 3 rounds. Unfortunately for the King George, it looks not very good. And none of their shells have been able to do enough damage. Despite being a, on paper, somewhat even matchup, it looks like the King George, unfortunately, is getting absolutely obliterated by the Iowa. Unless they can get a crazy lucky hit. Ooh! Crazy lucky hit. But it's a little, too late. And congratulations to the USS Iowa. The King George V put up a good fight, but in the end the US battleship came out on top. If you'd like to see more battles like this, please leave a comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps me out a whole lot and is totally free. Alright folks, thanks so much for watching, and bye bye now.